At 3 a.m., a group of self-proclaimed HOA enforcers broke into the home of retired Navy SEAL James Maddox, smashing through his door and toppling a dresser onto his newborn son's crib. One was an unlicensed plumber, the other a man with a violent criminal record. Yet they strutted through the house with arrogance, hiding behind fake vests and phony authority. What they didn't realize was that James wasn't just a quiet suburban dad. He was a soldier trained for moments exactly like this. And he wasn't about to let injustice walk free in his own home. And when the truth came out, caught on camera, backed by evidence, and echoed across the nation, justice didn't just knock. It roared through the front door. James Maddox hadn't felt peace in years. After 3 back-to-back deployments, most recently in the Horn of Africa where he led classified hostage recovery missions under a flag nobody there recognized, he was finally home. Not just in the States, home in a modest stilt house nestled on a quiet island on the edge of the Florida Keys. The Atlantic wind rustled through the palms outside, and inside it was a lullaby of stillness. No alarms, no gunfire, no countdowns. Just the soft creak of the rocking chair and the tiny rhythmic breaths of his newborn son rising and falling on his chest. Caleb, barely 7 pounds, barely 2 weeks old, the way he curled into his father's arms like he knew the world was still too much. James had waited his whole life for this. His wife Emily was asleep on the couch, their shepherd dog Bear snoring nearby. They'd moved here 2 months ago, hoping this tiny coastal community would be different. No more sirens, no base alerts, no constant fear, just breeze, ocean, and safety. He'd installed everything himself. Cameras, reinforced locks. The latest silent alarm system synced with his phone. Every corner of the property had been cleared and double-checked. Their paperwork with the local homeowners association had been filed weeks earlier. Everything was signed, scanned, notarized. Perfect. Or so he thought. At 3:43 a.m. the silence shattered. A deafening bang echoed through the walls as if someone had thrown a battering ram into the front door. James was on his feet before his heart caught up. Instinct took over. He reached for the Glock 19 on the nightstand. Loaded, chambered, safety on, but held it low. He crept toward the foyer, heart pounding with the precision only combat survivors understood. On the porch stood 2 men. One was tall, barrel-chested, wearing a black tactical vest stamped with white letters, HOA Enforcement. The other, slimmer, kept his face hidden behind a cloth mask. Neither wore a badge. Neither announced authority. No search warrant. No knock notice. No visible I just posture. Aggressive. Entitled. The one in the vest pointed at the porch light. Violation of community facade code. We're here to inspect utilities. Before James could speak, the masked man brushed past him, stepping into the living room like he owned it. Bear, the dog, growled from the side, but didn't move. Trained not to strike without command. James blocked the hall, voice calm but firm. You're not authorized. You don't come in here without notice, and definitely not at this hour. But they weren't listening. The masked man turned down the hallway and opened the bedroom door. Need to check the wiring behind furniture, he mumbled and marched toward the wall by the crib. Emily stirred behind him, confused, half awake, clutching the baby blanket. James, what's happening? She whispered. James took 1 step forward, but it was already too late. In one swift motion, the intruder grabbed the side of the tall wooden dresser next to the crib and shoved it forward as if it were a file cabinet in his way. It tilted, groaned, and fell. The sound was worse than anything James had ever heard. A deep, crushing thud. Then silence. For 1 breathless second, nobody moved. Emily screamed sharp, primal. James' soul froze. He lunged forward and ripped the dresser upright with a strength fueled by a fear he'd never known. The crib, Caleb's crib, was splintered on one side. The mattress had crumpled. And in the middle of it, their son out crying, not moving. James scooped him up, his hands trembling. Caleb's tiny chest quivered. 1 weak inhale, then nothing. Emily collapsed beside them, sobbing, pleading. Call 911. Please, baby, breathe. But the 2 men didn't flinch. The one in the vest shrugged, muttered he must have pulled it over himself. We're just doing our job. And with that, they turned and walked out. Not a glance back. Not a word of remorse. James stood frozen, cradling his newborn, blood running cold down his spine. His world didn't just shift, it cracked open. And he knew in that moment, with absolute clarity, the fight wasn't behind him anymore. It had just arrived at his front door. James didn't sleep that night. He sat in the dark holding Caleb, staring into the silence as Emily sobbed in the other room. The next morning, after their son was stabilized at the hospital and Emily finally drifted into exhausted rest, James returned home. What greeted him wasn't peace. It was a bright orange violation slip taped to his door citing unauthorized lawn decoration and improper window tinting. It was a message, one he read loud and clear. That was the moment he declared quiet war. He built a binder, collected footage from every camera, made copies, backups. He documented every interaction, date-stamped every encounter. He reached out to local journalists, sent digital packages to legal advocacy groups. And when one young reporter replied, Leah, a small-town columnist with a knack for digging, James gave her everything. She ran a piece titled Baby Crushed, Justice Ignored, inside a rogue HOA. It exploded overnight. Residents came forward. Whispers turned to statements. Violations were being used as tools of fear. And now, thanks to James, someone was finally willing to stand in the fire. It snowballed. National media picked it up. A civil rights attorney contacted James pro bono. Investigations were launched. And when the court day came, James didn't wear his medals. He wore a plain suit and brought one photo, Caleb in his arms, a bandage still wrapped around his chest. The jury didn't take long. The verdict? $3.2 million in damages. Criminal charges against the fake enforcers. HOA leadership removed. And new law introduced at the state level requiring certification, oversight, and public accountability for any neighborhood security or code enforcement agents. The day after the trial, James stood on his porch again. The breeze was the same. The wind still rustled the trees. But everything else had changed. Bear lay at his feet and Caleb, healthy, smiling, slept in his arms. James didn't smile for the cameras. He didn't gloat. He just whispered to his son, "We're safe now." And for the first time in a long, long time, he believed it. At 3 a.m., a group of self-proclaimed HOA enforcers broke into the home of retired Navy SEAL James Maddox, smashing through his door and toppling a dresser onto his newborn son's crib. One was an unlicensed plumber, the other a man with a violent criminal record. Yet they strutted through the house with arrogance, hiding behind fake vests and phony authority. What they didn't realize was that James wasn't just a quiet suburban dad. He was a soldier trained for moments exactly like this. And he wasn't about to let injustice walk free in his own home. And when the truth came out, caught on camera, backed by evidence, and echoed across the nation, justice didn't just knock. It roared through the front door. James Maddox hadn't felt peace in years. After 3